Hello, everybody. I am very excited to have with me today. Well, it's Magical Egypt Live, but it's not live. So we're just going to roll with it anyway, with two amazing gentlemen who have just produced a movie that I got to watch the premiere of yesterday that absolutely blew my mind. So I would like to introduce Jason. You just told me, Jason Robba and Thomas Sheridan. Is it Robba or Roba, Dallin? Sorry.
It's Robba.
Roba. And as I said, it's 6 a.m. I'm just having my first coffee, so I'm not going to be fabulously on the ball. But congratulations, gentlemen. What an achievement. You both should be incredibly proud.
Thank you. I mean, we're so lost in the minutia of it for a good few months that it wasn't until it actually sat down and watched it in totality that I was like, oh my God, what have we done here? It's unbelievable. It was that kind of moment, because everything was, Jason was pinned down on the audio and then that production and music. I was pinned down on video editing, and it was created in little chapters, and I was desperately worried if they would flow together into a whole, but they were absolutely seamless, mainly because of Jason's music that well, to be honest, we put an awful lot, Jason will tell you this, we put an awful lot of thought into it. Like literally every scene was constructed, like a scientific project, like a ritual. It really was. And it was very easy. Neither one of us struggled at all, because I think we both kind of, well, yourself being a singer and stuff, being from an artistic background, I find working with artistic people helps a lot. If they're artists or poets or musicians, I just find it's easier for my nature. And so we're both kind of left and right brained. Jason is a former US Marine. I have a background outside the arts and technical training and electronics and things like that. So we both got a strong left-right brain thing. And I think that's what brought us to this story, is that we're both, I'll let Jason continue, but we're both fascinated by the Apollo mission in particular. And I can remember, I'll let Jason take over, but we can talk about this later, but it was, I think that left-right brain thing not only saw the technical marvels of getting rockets into space, which is unbelievable, but also it would not have happened without a magical energy behind it. It simply wouldn't have happened. And that magical force we traced right back to Jack Parsons. And that's really was the genesis of it.
So Jason, how on earth did you meet up with Thomas and get this project going together? Like, where did you guys come together? How did you meet? And I do see you have what is that? A drum set and a trombone?
I've got that's my tuba over there. I started my musical career as a tuba player in the United States Marine Corps band and the U.S. Army band. And then I also, the fun side of my music is with drums and electronics and synthesizers. But
that's amazing.
With Thomas, our paths crossed on Facebook. I came across his work a number of years ago, and it just really, I saw his work. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's the real deal. Like he knows what's going on. I could see a similar way of looking at things that I have in him. Our personalities are probably very different, but just his mind, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see all this guy thinks. And as you're saying, working together, with his kind of background and my kind of background, we made a nice workflow that this film just, once we got the momentum going, it was like a rocket taking off, there was, it's just straight up.
Great metaphor, darling. All right. So the music, did you guys actually score the music yourselves? Because I know Thomas is a musician as well. He's ex-rock star, actually. So who did what jobs within the film? Who was the editor? Who was the writer? Who was the score person? How did it all break down?
Well, I worked on the score primarily. Thomas helped with some songwriting for the, he wrote the song for the end of it during the end credits, the rocket song, the Boom Boom Bang Bang Rocket Ship one. But I did the score, and I did the score and the sound design.
The X-rated lyrics removed. We decided to take that out at the last moment. It actually had quite a shocking intersperses that were like, I don't know, it was fun, but it was like, I think we decided, no, we'll leave it out.
We need to do a bootleg release of that one.
I was
I
just
know.
going to say, let's get the X-rated version out there. That's going to go viral. That's crazy. It was great.
Have a girl
Great.
sing. The euphemisms were strong, you know, rockets. You can use your imagination, you know.
Yes, it's very ripe, isn't it? It's ripe symbolism. Oh my gosh. So how long did the project take altogether?
It took a fairly long time, I think, didn't it, Jason? We mainly because we kind of we started off with initial rush, and we had a couple of meetings. This is before Christmas, sometime, wasn't it? It was around September, something like that.
I think we started around Parsons' birthday on the 2nd of October. I think that was somewhere around there. Yeah, 2020.
That is great.
And then we were just doing bits and bobs, really. And then after Christmas, that's when the grease started hitting the wheels, and we started really momentum. And Jason I'd done the first bit of narration, which I'd written it out and typed it on paper for the opening chapter. And it was just so, look, don't listen to me talking, hear it in your mind, and then write a piece of music. And then he did that without playing it for me. And then it was a true artistic thing when you think about it. Then I recorded the narration on audio, just my voice. And I said to him, you can break it up as any way you like, just keep the continuity, but you can add gaps between things that punch your music in. And he sent me back the opening segment. And he'd also been to Aurora Seco, which I was supposed to go to. We were supposed to meet him in Southern California for the exterior shots, and we had everything planned. We'd rented cars, accommodation, all set up. And a week before I was to go out, the U.S. government put Ireland on the COVID blacklist, and I couldn't. It was literally a week before, but Jason had to go down on his own. And so when he got the rushes back of the Aurora Seco footage and the Devil's Dam footage, that sort of like was the kind of spark that really got things going. And so I put some footage together for the opening segment, and we made a quick trailer just to sort of like light a fire under our own backsides as well too. And we put it online, and people were like, wow, that's an amazing trailer. And that was important because it set the atmosphere for how the film was going to be. That was an important thing, because we'd never worked on anything at this magnitude, a feature-length film. Like it's over over an hour and a half. We'd never worked. I'd never done this, and and Jason was still finishing his college university degree, I think, at the beginning as well. So he was doing all his exams and everything like that. And he went back to school after the military. And so there was a lot of things that held us up for a while. But once we got the self-confidence that we knew what the atmosphere was like, it just became a series of like, I'd write the script, I would meditate on it, then edit it, then record it as a voice, send it to Jason. He would put the music, bring it back to me, and then I would add the visuals. And it really was like at one point almost a shamanic process, wasn't it? It was just, I don't think we had one thing we had to redo, other than minor things like I might have said, oh, the audio is a bit funny and it's a bit, but that was mixing. That was just a mixing thing. But there was absolutely nothing that was problematic. Nothing. It was almost like the muse and the daemon was actually working the film with us. You know, when you're in that kind of thing, you know.
Oh, look, I have to say, Thomas, everything from the trailer.
Sorry, Denise, I have to say this. I forced Jason to I took the initiative, and I forced Jason to watch the Magical Egypt series. And I said, see the atmosphere and that those folks got? That's that. I want something similar without interviews. And that's how we got, and that's they'll tell you that's true. That was the school.
That's so lovely.
I sent him to school on that.
Look, I just wanted to say
that's how I envisioned the whole trip in Southern California. I was imagining them together. I'm like, okay, that's going to be me and Thomas, you know, going back and forth.
Oh, you guys, honestly, I feel so flattered. It was, I want to say everything from the trailer, right? The first thing is, you've got Alistair Crowley. Is it actually Alistair Crowley singing that song about Jack Parsons, Put Me on the Moon? Or like, is it really? Oh, is it? It really caught the imagination. It had such a great sense of humor. It visually was stunning. And it really caught the whole occulty, spacey atmosphere, right? So I love that. That was the first thing that I saw. Then the name Liber Velocity, I think, is fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about where does that name come from?
Well, as you know, Crowley's books were always called Lieber and usually had a number after them. And I made a film last year about H.P. Lovecraft called Lieber Providence. And I just like the idea of a film being named like a book. So I think we were just speaking to Jason about it. We wanted something to capture rockets. And it didn't take long to come up with the name. The velocity thing was perfect because what the struggle was within Jack Parsons' work was not only to create an escape velocity to leave the Earth's atmosphere, to create that kind of power, but also an escape velocity to transcend his nervous system consciousness, like that. So the two are perfect for each other. And Jason came up with the tagline, "The apotheosis of Jack Parsons," because I mean, in a way, he is a god. I mean, he has attained the God Star kind of in the Genesis P-Origin way. He has kind of attained that God element in the way Crowley had envisioned things from Thelema and stuff, So yeah, I mean, we were unashamed fans of the guy, and we were both always upset. We spoke about this, how he'd never been given a good deal. He always had people attacking him because he was, involved in the occult, spooky, woo, from a Christian viewpoint. And which didn't bother us because I'm a pagan and I don't. Jason is just his own thing. I don't know what Jason is, but he's not Christian like me, or like he's not a pagan like me. But what he's outside that, so it was able to. We both had a neutral, and that was even when we came speaking to L. Ron Hubbard. I had no baggage with L. Ron Hubbard because I'd read Dianetics and thought it was quite an interesting read years ago. And anything else, this film was pre all that stuff, so I was just going to go in there and just tell him as he knew it. And Jason knows a lot about that subject, and so he became Jason was a very, very valuable touchstone when I was writing those sections. But the whole thing was, we both came to the conclusion very early on after very deep research that this guy was a really good man. That he was into the occult, yeah, he was into sex magic. Yeah, he was a woman, but that was Hollywood in the 40s. You know what I mean? We can't compare that by today's standards. That's how even working class guys would have been back then, those days. In Australia, Ireland, America, anywhere, and so we can't judge them by today's sort of like politically correct woke standards, and just constant element of decency came off him. He came from a very affluent background. The family lost all its money and he had to go work in factories. And yet he developed a great empathy for working class people and what they had to deal with. And there's numerous stories of his life helping people out with money whenever he had it. Little things like that. Like his ex-wife had a baby with Wilfred Smith and he looked after them. I mean, that wasn't his child. And it was just, he had this, and he was fired from the US Aerospace because he wouldn't grass out a fellow employee who was a working class guy who would have lost his job and been really destroyed. And so we both saying, like, here's this guy that some people think is a monster because he was involved with Crowley and the Agape Lodge and Pasadena and the occult. But the ultimate story is of not only a brilliant rocket scientist and a genius regarding a real Renaissance man, but a genuinely decent guy you'd want to be friends with. And that was what so many people recalled about him, that he was just a really lovable character and very likable. Now, there was a TV series out last year called Strange Angel, which I have to say could have been a lot worse than it was. Yet they sexed up the kind of stories of things that happened, which Hollywood does. But the actor did kind of capture him in the way I kind of imagine he might have been, like a very laid back, easygoing Southern California guy. Kind of like like Jason is from that part of the world. I imagine having the same kind of culture and personality, and that was really what we wanted to say about him. I don't know if Jason wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, completely agree, Thomas. I I was just real happy to be able to present the script that you wrote, Thomas. Like this was just such a justice done to Jack Parsons' story, because as you know, as he was portrayed in Strange Angel or in other stories, the end of his life was kind of viewed as a failure, and you know that he was that we told his story in a way lovingly, and that brought him into a modern a sense of modern mythology. Like you're talking about making him into a god, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's just real pleased with the way your script came together on it. Just absolutely wonderful.
Look, as
Yeah.
I was watching this, I had watched the Strange Angel series because I am also very, very fascinated with him and that entire cast of characters, because a friend of mine actually knew some of these people. So it's very, very interesting to me to kind of learn more about them. And I have to say that your film was so much more vital and invigorating and enthralling, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm finally getting to see the skinny here. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Like Thomas said, that one was all sexy and scintillating, but this is like, I finally feel like I've got the real understanding of what was going on. And that is why I'm just so impressed with you guys. It's like a complete unveiling of this incredibly tangled sci-fi magic rocket story, and it all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense. So I really have to hand it to you. I think it's just a brilliant piece of work. Now, Walpurgis Night, tell me, was there any significance to having it released on a magical evening, guys?
Yes. We did. That was the target we set back in before Christmas. We'd aimed for Walpurgis Beltane. Remember that the paganism was also part of the Agape Lodge, life in Pasadena, and they celebrated Beltane, and they celebrated things like Samhain, and they were actually very ahead of their time. They were doing things like growing their own food and stuff like that. They were kind of like a hippie commune at the time of Clark Gable and Joan Crawford, in that world. But it was kind of like that in a way. And even though they were, he looked like a film star himself anyway. And so there was this, so it was, that element was there. I think, Beltane, well, one of the reasons I went for the Beltane thing, I decided to put up at 3:30 a.m. in the middle of the witching hour in Ireland, launch it on Beltane. Beltane is the season of fire in the Celtic world, and he was killed by a fire. And so it was almost like, this is going to burn all the preconceived past stereotypes about him and his world, and burn them away to bring in a new consciousness regarding Jack Parsons. So if people are making movies or talking about him from now on, they're not screaming Devil Man and things like that, or they can actually, and also we're both driven by the point that we want people in NASA and JPL to embrace him. This is like, it's quite remarkable to me that him and Ed Foreman, his childhood friend, when they were in their like 10 and 11, were building rockets in their backyard, and two little boys building rockets in their backyard were the ones who started the American space program. To me, that's like the most magical thing absolutely possible. And he founded JPL, which is still going to this day, and he founded the Aerojet company, still going to this day. And that started from two kids, JPL, and ultimately that's where NASA came from. They developed the technology that they got the rockets into space, and two boys in their backyard in California started the American space program. And I want people to know this, because it just shows what if you have an imagination which was fired through their common love of science fiction, that you can achieve anything. And they achieved it. It's unbelievable. I kept pinching myself all as they were moving up through their careers, and I'm saying, this started with it. It was like, you talk about the Beatles starting as a skiffle band, this kind of thing. that league, but even more so because they wouldn't have, if they were musicians, they wouldn't have even had instruments. They'd have to invent instruments.
It really, I mean, it's a huge story. And look, you've got L. Ron Hubbard that came out of that group. Aleister Crowley was part of it. I mean, some of the most influential people in modern history were circulating around this group. I mean, there was something definitely going on there. Um, Valerie, an elemental, his second wife, that is more of, it's not the big rocket story, but it's kind of a crazy story that you do a ritual trying to evoke Babylon and she literally comes and knocks on the door. I mean, does that part of the story also surprise you guys at all, or is it just par for the course for Jack Parsons?
I think there's a tremendous magical charge there that both Jack Parsons and Ron Hubbard, the two of them coming together, and that there was quite the magical charge there, especially when they were doing the Babylon working then after Jack had left his wife and his wife's younger sister Sarah, that was in love with Ron at the time. But there's just that amount of psychic tension there between those two men, and the magical ability that both of them had, kind of as twin brothers, but also opposites at the same time. They tore open the fabric of reality in 1946, and Marjorie Cameron coming through, as an elemental
Marjorie,
incarnate.
I'm calling you Valerie. Sorry, darling. Okay. Marjorie. Yeah, Marjorie. Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, they just ripped open the fabric of reality there. True, the stuff that within Thelema and within magic that everybody talked about from the Golden Dawn and from Aleister Crowley. These guys were the real deal. They were making this stuff happen. They were working with the fabric of reality and causing change and conformity with will.
It's a testimony. Yeah, it's a testimony to Jack Parsons' character. This guy, this girl had run off with this Ron Hubbard guy. Well, in the same building, and because he had this liberal Thelema agape mentality of love and freedom, this kind of thing. That he said, it's be wrong to get jealous. It would be wrong to, this is how the gods work, kind of thing. But he was deeply tormented inside. But to his credit, he didn't go after directly. He didn't punch, L. Ron Hubbard. He actually went into a very dark place, and it's covered in the film, where he started to work on European folk magic and voodoo to try and almost purge himself. Like almost like a heroin addict going cold turkey. He was trying to purge himself of his frustration over that his woman was now with Hubbard, and remarkable paranormal things happened in the place, because of it. He reached an extreme psychic sense. But the gods move in mysterious ways, and the gods may have created this social dynamic between the two of them involving Sarah Northrop in order to amplify the charge that was coming. So, and there's a very cryptic thing that when the second Babylon working was finished, they went out to the desert just to sort of like hang out. And Parsons had this moment of revelation. It was like peace came over him, and he said, "It's worked." Like his daemon or his higher self had made it work. And then at that moment, Marjorie Cameron was knocking on the door of the Agape Lodge. You just couldn't make this stuff up. You just could not make it up. And she's also one of the first people in the United States to have reported a UFO, which is fascinating stuff too as well. And she went on, well, that's a later story, but she was a remarkable woman in and of herself. She was a wild chick when she was younger, but when she met Jack Parsons, they were definitely a genuine loving couple who'd care deeply about each other, which only makes his ends even more sad, But him and like Jason was saying, Hubbard and Parsons, it was a dynamic duo in every sense. It was dynamic in all emotionally, magically, sexually, personality wise. And when you read like Parsons' letters to like Crowley, about Hubbard, he thinks the world of him. He thinks it's like he thinks the world of him, and this is again his nature. He's the kind of person who he strikes you that when he meets someone, he would look for the good in them rather than the bad.
So when for people that know of Jack Parsons as a rocket scientist, the fact that he was able to actually create these rockets that led to us going to the moon is a significant undertaking. From a magical perspective, though, however, I have heard magicians say that this Babylon working was as a significant as an event as that rocket creation from a magical perspective, right? So, for instance, Lon says it's kind of AD and BC, like before and after that Babylon working, things have changed. So can you explain a little bit about what was that operation for? What were they trying to accomplish for people that don't understand and haven't seen the film yet?
Well, what they were basically undertaking was the very early forms of chaos magic. Now, within the Crowley mythos, the sacred whore goddess Babylon is related in a kind of a dynamic way to the whore of Babylon mentioned in the book of Revelations. And this creation of this Babylon elemental was brought about by Parsons was a gigantic science fiction fan. A book called Darker Than You Think, written by a guy called Jack Williamson. And on the cover was a painting of a wild woman. And the story is about shape-shifting werewolf type shamanic people that have survived into the modern age. And the woman on the cover of the book, he said, that's what she looks like. The flaming red-haired woman on the back of a beast. On the cover of the book. Now, that was the idea then was the idea of this happening was then to find this woman and through a kind of a sex magic ritual, but not necessarily totally a sex magic ritual, to impregnate her with a magical child. And this magical child would bring about the new aeon, the kind of the beginning of the new world. Now, although there are specific grimoires for this, Parsons and Hubbard were kind of geniuses in a way. They were, because what they took Crowley's novel Moonchild, which is a fictional novel about a similar idea, and they understood the power that science fiction had, because Hubbard was a science fiction writer, that science fiction had done to bring their world into manifestation, because they understood that science fiction was more than just stories. You were creating the future before you and then spooling yourself into it. And that was, so they decided the same thing with Crowley's novel Moonchild. And so Marjorie Cameron arrived on the day of the final moment of the working, and and she did claim to give birth to the magical Moonchild as an elemental 9 years after Parsons' death, I believe it was. But it was to create a magical child that would change reality and bring in the aeon of Horus, which is to be an aeon of spiritual self-involvement and also compassion, to undo Christianity. I know that may sound heretical to people who might be Christians, but Crowley's belief was that the Christianity thing talks about love and everything, but the world is just full of war and debt. And so, like later on, Anton LaVey and the Church of Seth, a kind of an inverted version of that, through the creation of this child, this child of the new aeon, would bring in what he called Crowleyanity and heal the world. Now, it did happen because literally, if you look at right after Babylon, the world did change. We got the beginning, Elvis came around, rock and roll, movies changed, they got darker, more into, they went from being Doris Day films to Marlon Brando's On the Waterfront. You had then rock and roll, the Beatles, the hippies, the flower child. It happened, they made it. They literally blew reality open. And people like Kenneth Anger were very aware of this. Having known Marjorie Cameron later on, it actually appeared in one of his movies. And that was it. They did it. They blew reality open. The magical child was, Elvis Presley, Little Richard, the Beatles, Marlon Brando, all the pop cultural things that the rock and roll era and the great movies, Marilyn Monroe, it all spawned out of that. Culture was changed, and that's why it was so important. It took place in Hollywood as a center of things. And so, if people say, what did Aleister Crowley do with his life? He created 20th century. I mean, well, the latter half that anyway, which has come to an end now. That's something Jason and I've been working on, something minor regarding that at the moment. But we can give you a little sneak preview later if you want to. But
I would love that, because that was actually my question. So your proposition is that has come to an end, and we've moved into a different era now.
We haven't moved in. We're in a state of flux. This is a time of chaos.
Okay.
Basically, I think that the Aeon of Horus, from my own opinion, I've been saying this for a few years, and I've had like friendly arguments with Telemites and some OTO folks about this. Nothing nasty. That it ended with two things: the creation of the internet, that became a kind of an oversoul for humanity in a way, because that replaced the churches. The churches are dying, so Christianity went down that way. People are seeking comfort and solace and in the internet rather than within a religious community, and they're finding other religions, coupled with the resurgence of European paganism. I think those two, and I think if Crowley was alive today, he'd go, fair enough. Yep, that's it. He wouldn't be annoyed about it. He said, yep, that's what happened. It's fair enough. And we're in a state with this is what the whole lockdown in 2020, 2021, and the pandemic and all this nonsense and the corona is all about this. And this is all about the state of flux. We are not into our new state yet. But it will happen. It will take time, and it'll like any birth, it will be painful. Remember, the Babylon working happened at the end of World War II, so the horrors of World War II played a huge part in the reconstruction of reality. If you didn't have troops storming the beaches on D-Day, you probably wouldn't have had Little Richard. I know that sounds weird, but that's how this matrix works. And when you start thinking in a magical way, you see things are not unconnected. They're actually a part of a story that writes itself and also resolves itself according to what human consciousness gets from it. And so I think it ended then. I think in fact, I think the signaling of the end was probably David Bowie's video for Black Star. That when I first saw that film, my jaw hit the floor. And the video, we're releasing a video on this on Room 313 either tonight or tomorrow. I mean, that video is the story of the last 2 years and a half, the corona and everything around the sun it begins with. And I won't spoil it for anyone, but I remember David Bowie was very connected, was a Thelemite, and he did do Crowley and Golden Dawn rituals when he lived in Hollywood, and this kind of thing. And and so he was sort of like, he had a phenomenal daemon muse who channeled those people working with him on the Black Star video channel. That was the end. It ended then. I remember watching that video and said, this means something. I don't know what it is yet. And then when the lockdown happened and I started to see the spiritual elements of the coronavirus thing kicking in, I started to think Black Star. And went back to the video and looked at it. Says, yep, that was it. His muse was telling him what was coming. And you'll see the video when it's released tonight or tomorrow. And
I can't wait, John. No, I have to say the same thing. I think it shocked me at a deep level, and I same thing. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it meant something. So yeah, I'm with you.
Well, the first record I bought when I was 9 on Talbot Street in Dublin was Life on Mars by David Bowie. So right from the very start, my introduction to space and rock music was kind of fused through Bowie. And then I remember seeing the man. So right from the very early stage, I associated space travel, like when I heard a Space Oddity later on, and then the man who fell to earth and stuff. I associated all that stuff with mysticism. And Jason and I were talking about this. And when the mysticism stopped for me in space travel? When the space shuttle blew up with the school teacher on it. I'll let Jason take over from here.
Yeah, it seems like something changed with space travel within the United States at that point. We were no longer using mythological names. We had Apollo, we had Gemini, And then there was something kind of cold and overly pragmatic about, well, now we have the mission is STS number something, and it became kind of like a spreadsheet. And there was no longer the magical charge that was there. It was no longer a ritual. And there's also, for me, there's something strange about taking a civilian out of the public with Krista McAuliffe and, you know, putting her in as an astronaut, where it, you know, was that, you know, if we want to speak in Crowleyan terms, was that her will in life to become an astronaut, or was this, it was more like she was a you know, the willing volunteer from the audience of, you know, someone getting up and saying, you know, can we have a volunteer from the audience? And then she was kind of that sacrifice, that, you know, and there's something real dark about that. And just since then, you know, the space shuttle never went up out of Earth's orbit. It's a, you know, there was a glider, and now, you know, we don't even have the space shuttle program anymore. And I think that it was those boosters, the two twin boosters on the side of the space shuttle, that after the Challenger, they went back to Parsons, his either solid fuel or liquid fuel formula on the twin boosters from the space shuttle after that. So you look at that footage of the Challenger going, and the two solid boosters going off on the side, kind of making this interesting shape there. And after that, they went back to Parsons formula, I believe. So, but it's just, I think at that point, you know.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. When Thomas was talking, I was thinking about this. You know, when you're trying to do like hallucinatory or ethnogenic journey, set and setting is really important, right? It seems though that there is a cosmic set and setting for these things, right? So when you're talking about Jack Parsons, you have Hollywood, you have war, you have all of this stuff, right? Like the set and setting is so big and so complicated. And then with the when the blow up, usually this is the one where they blew up and they died, right? I mean, that is also a very interesting era within American history, in the respect that things had become a lot more it's kind of like another turning point of an age. And the thing that's kind of interesting too is that if you look at how quickly things are changing, right? So we had the Jack Parsons things and the World War, and then we went kind of to the hippies in the 80s and the 90s and the internet. Things are just accelerating. So when you say, when Thomas was saying the age of Horus, you know, it might not have been an age as in thousands of years, but things aren't taking thousands of years anymore to move through these progressions. You know, if you think about the idea of talking to somebody on the phone, you know, that they were talking about in Star Trek, and now everybody's doing it, you know what I mean? It's like things are really, really happening very quickly. So I'm very curious to see what this next age is going to bring. The set and setting of Corona with lockdowns and all of the energy that people have kind of had to have repressed, that's going to have to bubble up somehow, I think. You know, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the next stage is. So maybe this time next year we can do another call and there'll be another movie. But look, I just want to thank you guys. I really enjoyed it. And the one reason I wanted to do this is I wanted to get it out to all of my Thelemite friends and all of the Magical Egypt people, because I think that they're really, really going to enjoy it. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell me before we say good morning, good night, good evening? Is there anything else, guys? Yes, Thomas, go, darling.
One thing I want to say is that the ritual, if people have questions and doubts about magic, that Jack Parsons, when he was working with the Galset Rocket Research Group and was launching rockets, he used to do invocations and magical chants. And his friends, the other people in the group, like Frank Molina, who was a very famous rocket scientist, would become, and Theodore von Karman, who was his professor, they just thought he was this character, this delightful screwball. And they were like, what are you on about? And he'd be up partying all night with Ed Foreman, and they'd often show up to work still drunk and things like that. And so they just thought, you know, they were laughing at him. But if you look at the whole launch of the Apollo Saturn V rocket, especially at Apollo 11, the rocket is removed from a tabernacle. It moves in a processional pathway to the launch pad. You have the countdowns. It's 11. The splash boosters are shaped like hexagons, like on the top of Saturn. It's Saturn V, the 5 points of the pentagram. That is an obelisk, like an Egyptian obelisk, being launched into space, and that's what did it. The Russians had a more powerful rocket in the Soyuz, and they had a more powerful. They were way ahead in the rockets for years and years and years, and then suddenly overnight, the Americans put a fella on the moon out of nowhere, and but it hadn't been out of nowhere. They had, like, Apollo 8 had flown around the moon and come back, and 3 astronauts did die in Apollo 1 and things like that. So there was terrible sack, but they learned things. There was something like 60,000 fail safes on the Saturn V, so 60,000 things could go wrong and it could still get to the moon. It was quite incredible at engineering. And people, who slag off the whole thing and say it never happened. Jason and I have read the documents. We looked at the computer programming that made the LEM land. These were alchemists. These were magicians. These were amazing people who, went beyond. They were like what Isaac Newton or the great scientists of the past were, but there was hundreds of them. And the incredible bravery of the astronauts to do that must never be forgotten, ever. They went through that Van Allen belt. Now, the reason we don't go through the Van Allen belt today is because the risk for cancer is so high, right? But these were soldiers and military folks, mostly Air Force and Navy. So when you sign your life away when you join the military, so you have no human rights. Now, since space shuttle times, it's nearly always the civilians now. So you have health and safety issues. You just can't send somebody through the Van Allen belt anymore because they can sue you and stuff and things like that. They come back with all kind of cancers. Now, but these guys were hard as nails, and they were like, cowboys, really, space cowboys in that literal sense. So people should never take something like that for granted. Like I said earlier on, 2 little boys building rockets led to that, and I hope people watch this film feeling inspired that you can do anything. If you have the will. We always hear about Thelema will, the will to do things, the will to, and see things like sound. And what his story tells us is that life doesn't have to be ordinary, and that's what I think the ultimate tale of that is.
I have to say that, the film itself is an act of will, Thomas. In terms of, production value and length and storytelling. And this is the most phenomenal piece of artistry that I've seen come from you guys. And it's like, I'm just so impressed. It's absolutely production values 100%, script 100%, score 100%, story. You know what I mean? It's like it's an immaculate production, and I'm just so incredibly impressed with what you guys have done. And so I'm inspired. You've inspired me. Oh, my loves. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this time. And thank you for this amazing film. I can't wait to see what's next. I'm going to keep my eye out for this Black Star thing. And is there another production on the boards? Is there another full-length film that you think might come next?
Yes, we've started one, but we're not going to tell anybody. This will be a more of a Fortean topic, again, okay, based in the United States, and it will be just as groundbreaking how it approaches it. And we're already working. We want to make Beyond Room 313 like a proper channel, like a TV station, a body of work that people can, because I think we both have the skill sets in order to make that happen. And if we're lucky, we're finding right people, musicians and camera people. We've been very lucky, but it wasn't just us. We had a few extra people. Like Jason's dad is the pyrotechnics guy who built the rocket that's fired up into the sky, that kind of thing. There it is. And
wow. Liz, I was watching some of those and I'm like, did they find that footage or did they actually make that? That was very impressive. Impressive.
We're going back to the golden age of Hollywood here, making our own special effects by bits of plastic and stuff like that. When we made this film, we both put ourselves, it's now 1952. It's not 2021. It's 1952 with computers, and we put ourselves into those times.
Very well done. Yeah, no, great effort, guys. Great effort. Well, I can't wait to see the trailer for the new one, because if it's half as good as the old trailer for this one, it'll be fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your effort. Thank you for your service. Thank you for inspiring us. And I hope that, so where people can see it on YouTube under Beyond 313 is the room, correct? Of the channel?
Beyond Room 313 is the channel, and please subscribe. And if you like the Liber Velocity or any of the films on there, give them a share, because the more people we can reach, the better we can sort of like hack through reality and get people to be less negative about things like magic and stuff like that, and to ease people's fears and prejudices about such things like that.
And sweetie, how can we support the film now that the live chat, super chat's gone? If we want to send you guys some support, financial support for your work, is there a way set up to do that now?
Just share the film. That'll do us for now. And when we have the launch, we had a super chat that people could throw a few quid in, which some people might very kindly did. But otherwise, no, it's being paid for with advertising. So, you know, it's supporting itself with advertising. And maybe down the road, when we get better sorted out, we might release DVDs that will have extra footage and things like that. But we're still baby step now. We've only just begun really now, and once this is the ball is finally rolling on this. So, but that's down the road. Right now, just share the film with everyone, and watch it, and if you can, love it, because if you love it, you'll actually make the world a better place, and I really do believe that.
I wholeheartedly agree. Bless you guys. Well, everybody, Beyond Room 313, watch it, share it. And look, I mean, there is a way. I think there's Thomas Sheridan Arts at PayPal, right? Is your PayPal me? I'm just going to say it because I think that these guys deserve some.
It's not that.
Okay, all right, forget
I'm not comfortable. Buy a book or something.
Just share it then, damn it. Thank you guys. Fantastic. Have a really great evening.
Thank you, Venice.
Bye.
Thank you, Venice. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for this opportunity to allow us to.
My pleasure, John. I was blown away. So, all right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.